Welcome to It's Interesting You Say That. Today we talk about relationships and ways to bring stable and reliable love into your life.
If I didn't channel some of that in the right direction, I would not be that nice of a person.
I'm not the only one who is afraid of men.
And you're a man and you're expected to get your shit together.
The fact that I got pregnant and now I'm going to have a baby is going to make you go away. Just where's your money? Where's your child support?
Relationship with my wife and I might be easier for us is because we accept the man-woman thing.
That we are trying to do here is to help people to, guide them through some of these questions with some structure where it's okay to ask these questions. I have a friend who is really into true crime podcasts and finds a lot of comfort. It's like, it's all about murder. Like, how can you find comfort in that? And I think she finds comfort in the community that's built around this. And at a very deep level, what they care about is feeling safe. Because it's like almost all women are into these true crime podcast things. And the reason is, I think, I may be wrong, but to me, when I listen to those things, the reason I do so is because I try to figure out, like, what is a psychopath? How do they behave? How can I avoid be the victim of a psychopath or a serial killer or the best friend who killed their best friend? Like, how do I know that that's not going to happen to me? And it's very comforting to say, well, I heard this podcast and now I feel like, like I know the signs and I'm really savvy to it. And I think it's all part of that whole thing where women are often afraid, and particularly of men. So,
My wife listens to those. She'll first thing in the morning when she's doing her morning routine, that's what she's listening to. At night, that's what she's listening to. And for the longest time, I kind of had a similar perspective. Like, how is that relaxing? And I think I was a little bit judgmental at first because I was like, is everything okay? But she kind of said the same thing. Like, she finds it interesting. She likes to learn. She likes to see how these people think. And I think I can't speak for her, but it would make a lot of sense that would give somebody a sense of comfort, especially with, I don't want to call it a trend, but I've at least encountered a theme with a lot of the women that I coach that they are afraid of men. And providing that space where you can talk and providing a space where if you're shy and you can just listen and be a part of the conversation without having to jump into it, I do think I can see how that would provide a lot of comfort.
Well, and also just feeling like I'm not the only one who is afraid of men or afraid of strangers or afraid of just this kind of untapped, ununderstood psychology of people that suddenly makes them do things that are terrible. Like, I want to understand that so that I'm not a victim, but also it's just really fascinating. Like, some of these true crime things are like husband and wife have been married for 30 years. And suddenly he, trips her and she falls down the stairs and dies. And what happened? And is that happening next door? It's fascinating. Like, my next door neighbors or probably should go into this, but like the next door neighbors all of a sudden took off and is gone. Like, and she and I were friendly, and just one day she just disappeared, took the kids. Who knows what goes on in people's homes? And, you're curious, like, did he kick her out? Did she leave? What did he do? She's pregnant. So there's now, 3 kids, I don't know. But the psychology of people, I think, is really fascinating to us. And not only do I want to understand other people, but I want to understand myself. Could I ever do that? Would I ever have those thoughts in my head and then follow through? I don't think so, but I don't know. Did I be a murderer?
This is going to sound bad, but I think for some of the stuff I've listened to from just eavesdropping on my wife's podcasts, I've realized. I think we kind of touched on this, maybe some of my particular personality traits, which happens to make me a decent coach. But I think if I didn't channel some of that in the right direction, I would not be that nice of a person. I think I have the ability to not care and to kind of shut emotions off. And I really had to, when I realized how damaging that was to me and to the people around me, I really had to actively work on feeling. And one of the reasons Bounce Back kind of spoke to me was because I didn't have an example of how to feel or what to feel. So for me, the process of learning my own emotions had to come from a logic first perspective, a science first perspective, for me to understand it and then relate it back to what I was actually feeling.
Yeah, because you're a thinker. You're a thinker first, and then an emoter from like, do you feel like you have to justify your feelings before you can express them? Like, okay, something just happened and now you're angry or now you're sad. But if you think through and you're like, I should not be angry, I should not be sad, then do you shut it down that way? Or do you like, what's the process that's happening?
I think before there was a big feeling of not having to justify it. So like I'm angry or I'm sad, not realizing it consciously, doing whatever I was going to do and not feeling any sort of, I guess, remorse or guilt or even like a second thought about the action. So I almost had to learn what I was feeling first and then trying to almost debate what the correct moral action should be. Instead of going straight from emotion to action, it's like I had to put a buffer and say, almost like I'm going to court with myself and there's a judge and I kind of have to say, well, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. There's a defense. There's the attorney, like the prosecutor. And I have to go through that whole process before I can then go say what I'm going to say or do what I'm going to do.
That's like that old image of like, the angel and the devil, kind of going back and forth. But let's break that down for a second. How did you figure out what you were feeling?
Other people, probably through relationships, hearing how people described how I was. Mm-hmm. Made me, for a long time, I would just kind of ignore it. And I would think, well, if you're still here, then obviously I can't be that bad. And I know that's horrible, but
no, it's not. It's completely reasonable.
But eventually, maybe from a selfish perspective, I also realized this is not particularly getting me where I want to get either. And as silly as it may sound, one of the best ways that I learned how to, I think I didn't have an issue feeling, I had an issue knowing what I was feeling. And I remember looking at like a simple emotion chart. Like, this is happiness, this is sadness, this is rage. And then just seeing like a short 1-sentence description of what it was. And I was like, oh, well, that's that. And then I could recognize it when it happened. But it literally took like one of those little flywheel diagrams with different colors. And they said, this is the opposite emotion of this. And this is related to this, but it's not exactly that. And I don't know, there might have been like 20 or 25 different emotions on it. And I would just like look at it every time I felt something.
That's great. I mean, I think we should all do that because, you know, we're taught like how to read, and like if you put these letters together, they make a word. But emotions are even more complex than letters, and so of course we don't know what we're feeling, and particularly, I don't know if this is wrong, but I think for a lot of boys growing up, you're taught not to get into your feelings. I mean, it's just not, it's not what boys do and grow up, and and I find myself doing that to my son sometimes, and then I pull back because an emotional person, and he has in a lot of ways more emotions than I do, or he expresses them better than I do. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. He's much more like apt to say I love you and want a hug and things, and I just wasn't raised that way. So do you think that there's like a male female thing going on, that like you're trained that way, or do you feel like it's intrinsic to who you are as a male with kind of male hormones? You've got testosterone, so that's going to make you different. Like we know that from trans people. If you want to be more manly, if you want to have that gender, you have to take certain hormones in order to, and it doesn't just deepen your voice, it actually changes how you see the world and how you experience emotions. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think two things. Societally, I'm not sure. Well, let me start with the second thing. So after having our daughter, after having a son, I realized like they're both kind of like the stereotype boy and girl. My son loves trucks. My daughter loves like clothes and stuff. And like we didn't really put anything on them. We'd more so just encourage what they were already into. But something that really struck me, aside from like just almost like the innate preferences of each of them, was that my son is much more emotional.
Mhm.
I don't think it's that my daughter doesn't have as many or doesn't feel as much, but he needs much more guidance in how to cope with his emotions. And he has way more outbursts. He has way more everything. Everything is just 10x. And I'm actually the same way. I am the more emotional one in my marriage. It's not that my wife doesn't have emotions or anything. I don't think we feel any less. I'm not sure there's much of a difference there, but it's it's a more, I'm not sure how to say it, maybe more assertive, more vocal. I'm more vocal, more assertive in the emotion, more forward. Whereas my wife and my daughter, there, like if you were to like look at an ocean, I guess like it's kind of calm. It's calm, but there's currents underneath.
Mhm.
With me and my son, it's you can see the waves. In I think for men, one, there's the huge thing about a lot of young men just not having a father figure. And I think that coupled with the already present societal norm of men not showing their emotions means that men still have all the same emotions, but they don't, but there are typically no present examples of how to cope with them. Whereas I think with women, it's much more, I think it's much more acceptable to show emotion. And therefore, I think there are many more examples for them on how to deal with their emotions.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, I think about when I get together with my friends, my girlfriends, it is for the purpose of having emotional conversations. And I went away with a couple of girlfriends to a beach house that one of my friends has. And we spent the weekend talking about, I mean, we ate and hiked and did all that stuff, but we talked about our lives and in very emotional ways. And then I do tarot card reading. So I did a tarot card reading for them. And that raised a lot of like, what are some of the deep issues that they're working on in their relationships and their work and careers and things like that. And I can't imagine, and I don't want to stereotype, but I can't imagine that a men's weekend would be so focused on having conversations about the deep stuff that's happening in their lives. Like it would be filled with activities. It would be like, how little kids, they do parallel play for a long time until they develop those abilities to have those relationships. So they'll play they'll play trucks together, but the one kid's playing over here, the other kid's playing over here. They're not talking to each other. And I feel like that's what my sense is that when, men go away on their men weekends, that's what they're doing. And maybe they'll get drunk and they'll say, I love you guys, And I don't want to insult anybody or stereotype, but that's just my impression. I mean, am I wrong?
Well, I picture my son and just a men's weekend being just, monster trucks, hunting, and it's activity and goal oriented. And I think that's probably the primary way men have learned to channel emotion. I also think that's maybe trigger warning. I think that leads to a lot of domestic violence because when you're in a relationship and there's no physical outlet, there's nothing to do, and you have to actually sit face to face with someone and talk and express yourself and come to a conclusion. I think a lot of men just don't know how to do that. And even if it doesn't get to that situation, I still think a lot of men struggle in relationships with that. And there's a whole stereotype about that. And I think in more cases than not, unfortunately, especially with older generations, it's true.
Yeah. So women also are domestic abusers too. They get away. I don't want to say get away with it more, but they're more kind of in line with being feminine in terms of like I will be in a domestic abuser by going around and slamming every cabinet I see. Throwing something and breaking a dish, yelling at everybody all the time. Pick that up. Do this. What's wrong with you? And so there's more of that, like getting those emotions out in negative ways that's similar, but I think maybe not always as physical. And I think we all have the capacity to go crazy with our emotions, to not handle them, to not manage them and not know where to put them, and I always try to bring things around to kind of an understanding of evolution. We always forget that we're still evolving. We think that, oh, well, we're not living in caves anymore, so we're done evolving. We figured out fire and we made the wheel, and so we're all done with this. But we're still evolving, and there's a purpose in having men. If you think about, okay, you have the woman has to carry the baby. So there's going to be behaviors around that where they're going to want to have somebody there to protect them. They're going to want that man, that father to be there, et cetera. So there's certain behaviors and learn behaviors in order to make sure that happens. And so having emotions and being able to cry or to say, I love you, or to be nurturing and I'm going to cook this for you. And and we're going to have sex and all that stuff is going to be all good. And then there's a lot for the men from an evolutionary perspective that makes sense for them to not be like breaking down, crying all the time or getting super emotional about, hunting. You've got to be quiet. You got to be stealthy. You got to be focused. You got to, and if you're going to be emotional every time, like, oh, fuck, I didn't do it. And I'm going to cry. I didn't get that saber-toothed tiger or that, whatever. You're just useless, in that perspective. So, but we don't need that anymore, do we? And so what good is it doing for for men to suppress those feelings, except that women don't really like it all the time. Like if you're super emotional, it's they might be your friend, but they're not going to think of you as that romantic figure because despite everything, we still want men to be protectors and take care of us and, be there, be the best father, treat their mother right, treat us right. So what a confusing mess that we are in. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Well, I think you're right. Just because, everything that we've talked about, like might be like, it's kind of true. I know the only way I can get away with being emotional in my relationship is because I realize that there's a net positive if I'm able to express my emotions well. It means there can be more intimacy. It means there can be more trust. And it also means I can go out and, go hunt, go work more efficiently because I don't have something in the back of my head tearing me down. Yeah. And so my wife and I, from the beginning, I was always like, hey, this is bothering me. Like, hey, I'm sad right now. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. And this is my plan. And this is what I think. And you tell me what you see so I can get better. And then I can get back to what I need to do. And we can get back to our relationship.
Very efficient. Does it work for you? Does she have effect? Is she kind of like, well, I don't want to have it that organized. I want you to just be like, I don't know. That seems very efficient and very organized and very structured, which I think is good. I'm not saying it's bad, but when we think of emotions, like where's the passion in that? It's almost like you're saying, let's figure this out so I can go to the stuff. I can do my man stuff I want to do.
Well, that also means that's for my man stuff. That's, I can go back out to the office and work. I can go figure out this business thing. But that also means I can go take you on a date now. Like I can be fun. I can go play with the kids. I can be what you want me to be. I can be what I want to be. But I can't do that if I'm not able to properly express myself.
Yeah.
And I think this takes a certain amount of acceptance and trust. So I've never really done that with anybody, but my wife has always provided me that space. And if anything, it's been harder to get her to express herself.
Oh.
And I think now, not to toot my own horn, I'll see what she thinks about this when she hears it. But I think I came into the relationship with that mindset around my emotions and kind of set a bar. So I'm not going to let my emotions get in the way of what we're doing or what I'm doing. And I don't want it to get in the way. I don't want yours to get in the way of what we're doing or what I'm doing or anything. So that means if I can tell that you're sad, if I can tell that you're anxious, well, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. And if you don't feel like it now, that's fine, but I'm here. And now I was a little rough in the beginning, not rough, but just blunt. Mm-hmm. And I would say, like, we're just not going to move forward if we don't get past this. So I think in a way I was able to almost lead by example. And I think that's, for me at least, it's been applicable for me and my wife. And it's been applicable for the people that I coach. But the young men, I think, I would say they have it much harder because one, you're young. Two, the women that are around you might not have that patience. Honestly, you're probably going to be a little bit of a shithead and not deserve any patience. But that doesn't give them an opportunity to learn And so if you don't take it upon yourself to do it, a lot of the times nobody will do it for you. And you're a man and you're expected to get your shit together. And a lot of people they don't figure it out and they don't attract anyone that can help them. And that's just that. And I think part of that is evolution. But I do think there's a need for things are different now.
Yeah. I think that's such good advice for somebody who is young and says, I want a relationship, but I don't know how to make it work. And you're like giving this roadmap. You got to get yourself together first, figure out what your feelings are. And you do have a responsibility to give your partner a roadmap to you to say, this is how things work for me. This is how I need to have these conversations and resolve these things. And then space for her to say, this is how I'm going to respond to that, or the space that I need to have my feelings too. So did your wife ever come back to you and say, okay, I like how you've structured this, but I need you to do X, Y, and Z? Like, I've had relationships where I've had to say, when I'm feeling like this, I need you to do this for me. So if I'm feeling like this, don't come and, walk all over my feelings and tell me that I'm wrong or tell me that I should do this or that. Just listen to be supportive of me. Even if you think I'm wrong for 5 minutes, just be like, I'm sorry that you're feeling like this. And I want to respect what your feelings are. And it's okay to feel like that or something like that, instead of this again, you always have this, whatever it is. And not, like, we have to train each other how to be in a relationship with the other person. And I think what you're talking about is something that a lot of young men don't know how to do, because no one ever showed them. And this is how you set up the parameters of your relationship and the parameters of your feelings, so that you can resolve the things that happen, so that you're not like, the first time we get in a fight, it's over. And we have no door to open, no window to open to make it, to get back into it and resolve it. And I think that's tragic for so many relationships that should work if people only had those opportunities to get in and tinker under the hood and figure things out. But I see a lot of it, and I did this too, where it's like the first time something goes wrong, oh, this is never going to work. Oh, fuck it. It's just not worth it. This, and looking back, how much could have been resolved if we just had some structure to how we communicated with each other.
She has definitely, I say, what is not a one-way street. I think in a lot of ways, me expressing myself and then being able to handle. So, to be honest with you, there are times where I express my emotions in like the stereotypical, like, oh, well, you're a man, you don't need to be getting emotional. Like that came up. And I was like, well, okay, well, we still have a relationship here. We still got some goals. So help me figure it out and we'll get through it and we'll keep it going. And instead of saying, screw you, like, I'm a man, I don't need this anyways. When really I'm just hurt and insecure. And I think her being able to just say what was on her mind, right or wrong. And I wasn't the best at it at the beginning, but being able to handle insecurity and being hurt and still being able to continue. I think that's very, I think that you need that in order to be masculine, like in healthily masculine. And I think that gave her a lot of space to say, okay, like, I can piss him off. I can make him mad. I can hurt his feelings. And he's still safe to be around. And he still wants to hear what I think. And a lot of it was her telling me, like, I need you to say it this way. And me getting pissed off, coming back a week later, and then saying it the way that she wanted to say it. And she allows me the same thing. I was like, hey, well, when you come in the house and you act like this makes me feel this way. And even if it's just for me, would you mind doing it differently? And at first it's hell no, fuck you. And then it's like, but I love you and this is something really small and I think I can do it.
Yeah. But what you have there that a lot of people don't have is you were both committed to making it work. And unfortunately, I hope I didn't mess up the recording because I didn't click OK. Hopefully, what I see in a lot of young people, and I'll tell you a lot of the relationships I saw when I was working in public housing, because there were just a lot of young girls who were having babies, and the guy was, I would say, maybe 7 times out of 10, not totally involved. And there was, of course, exceptions where, dad was there, or they got married, or they, committed to raising the child together. But a lot of times there was just this very sad and tragic. Everybody was hurt all the time because there was, the guy was like, "Oh, you're hot. I'm going to have sex with you. Oh, oopsie, we got pregnant." And then a lot of pulling back on the guy's side because this thing's really big, and they couldn't articulate it, that I'm freaked out because now I'm going to be a dad, or I'm just going to act like my dad and not be there, or I'm can't handle growing up, or I don't know how to have a relationship with myself, much less with a woman. And then on the woman's side, and a lot of times it was a girl, young, under 18 years old, or under 25 or something, and she just wanted to have the assurance that not only are you going to be there for our child, but that you love me, that you care about me as a person. And there was so much kind of, you know, and I don't want to say this only happens, in the public housing world and all of that, and it's black boys and all that, because I think there's going to be that kind of imagery. I'm just telling you that the young people that I know, but I know this happens in every culture, that the there seemed to be a lack of a model that they could follow, that here's how I can be a woman and you can be a man, and we can find a connection with each other and have the structures around us support that, when everything will just pull us apart. The fact that I got pregnant and now I'm going to have a baby is going to make you go away, not bring you closer. Or the fact that I'm going to have a baby is going to scare the hell out of you because you're not ready to be a man, because nobody was ever a man for you and didn't teach you how to be a man. Um, or all those other things, or I don't know my emotions and I don't know how to express them. So the girl will express them by being pissed off or being like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to be like, give me the money. Just where's your money? Where's your child support? And then the guys, have a reason to say, well, all you care about is money. You're just a gold digger. But underneath all of that are two people who just need love, like everybody else, but they have no process, no guide or map to say, how do I make this happen for me in my life? And it's sad. And then, of course, the children suffer because they don't have, enough around them to help them, resources and love and care and attention and all those things we talk about that end up creating adverse childhood experiences, which is really just a lot of traumatic things that happen to children when they don't have that kind of structure. And I'm not like everybody has to get married and we have to live in this, Christian, two people household and traditional wife and a husband. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about love. And how do we create places where love can flourish instead of what we have now for a lot of young people, where love is not allowed to flourish because there are so many things that get in the way of it, including the culture, including, attitudes and I'm a man and you're a woman and you're supposed to be like this and you're supposed to be like that. And we don't feel, and I feel too much. And it just gets in the way. And it's sad.
what is your vision for how that gets better?
Well, I loved your process. That the first thing you have to be able to do is to start to learn what your feelings are. Because when you have that guide that what I'm feeling right now is anger, sadness, whatever. And then you have that capacity to ask yourself, why am I sad? Why am I angry? What's going on underneath it? Then you get to know yourself. You just need to know yourself. Once you get to know yourself, now you have the capacity to communicate that to the other person. These are things that make me really sad. These are things that make me really happy. These are things that make me feel proud. These are things that make me feel depressed. These are, whatever. I get anxious about this or that. And then you can do what you were able to do with your wife and your wife is able to do with you, which is to say, when I feel this way, these are the things that really help me. Now you get to be a hero for me because your wife gives you the space to be, she's a hero for you because she gives you the space to feel those feelings, get them out and feel better so that you can have that connection again. And so number one, we need to understand what our feelings are and understand how those develop in ourselves and what's underneath those feelings. And inevitably, we're going to find two things that fall underneath those feelings: fear and love, or the desire, the need for love, which is also fear, right? So I always come back to fear. If you understand what you're afraid of, you're going to understand yourself. And then you can start to say, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. These are the things I need to pull into my life so that I'm not afraid anymore. Or I can live with the fear because I'm going to have all these other things around me that are going to help me deal with this fear. And that, to me, unfortunately, I don't see love as a huge motivator. I see the desire and the need for love as the biggest motivator underneath everything that we're experiencing. And that the solution for that has to start with understanding that about yourself. Then you're not like, I don't know why I did that. Well, you probably did it. You said that you were angry, but you look underneath that anger and it's really you're afraid that someone's not going to love you. So you lashed out at that, at that person. And I always come back to these little moments that we have that make us angry. Every time I've gotten angry about something, underneath that anger is some kind of feeling of, you're doing this to me because you don't think I'm worthy of being loved and cared for. And whether it's somebody who's close to me who does that to me, or somebody out in the world who cut in front of me in the line, and I get really pissed off because what they did when they cut in front of me was said that I'm not worthy of the love and care of being in line and being, respected for, having my space in line. And it gets so jumbled up and we hurt each other so much because we don't understand those things about ourselves. And so if you're at Bounce Back Generation, the first thing you're learning are these things, that I need certain things. I need to be safe. I need to have one person there that cares about me and is there for me. I need to have ways that I can cope with what's going on in my life and feel good about myself again. I need to feel confident that if I do something, that other person is going to react in a way that's going to be helpful. We can have this mutual, conversation. I need to feel that I belong in this relationship, that I belong in this family, or that I belong in this community, in my neighborhood, in this group that I'm part of. And then I need to have people listen to me when I talk and really care about what I'm saying. Those are the building blocks. Those are the Bounce Back Generation building blocks, those 6 things. And we all need them. And the fact that we need them oftentimes gets ignored, that we need them, or we think that we're weak for needing them. I need to belong somewhere. I must be weak. I need to have a relationship with somebody. I must be weak. No, those are things that make you human. And by the way, those are things that the AI doesn't need, but you need, and we all need. And those are the things that make us unique on this planet, is that we need those things.
it amazes me sometimes how simple things could be.
Yeah.
And you can make, they can get as complex as you want to make them. But the six building blocks, now I've tried. I cannot think, at least off the top of my head. I don't think I've ever been able to think of anything when I was on a coaching call or I've been talking to someone where it did not come to like a foundational building block.
Mhm.
But people don't, it's not taught in school.
Mhm.
Sometimes, most of the time, your parents won't tell you.
Right.
Your friends don't know them. So you're left to kind of fend for yourself without any sort of foundational understanding of of what you actually need to be successful, to have relationships, to have some sort of peace within yourself, because you can't build a house without a foundation.
Exactly. And but we expect people to do it all the time. You just like, okay, you're born, go figure it out. You know, go at it. And then we wonder why things are so dysfunctional. I mean, we teach how to, diagram a freaking sentence, but we can't teach these six things and tell kids you have a right to these things as a human being. And this should be policy too. You should have a right to be safe. You should have a right to develop, to be taught and shown how to have relationships. Relationships are the most difficult, complicated thing that we do on this planet. And we have zero guidance, when or very little. I mean, sometimes we're lucky enough to have a parent who's very good at it, or, we develop a friendship and we learn, by doing. But what's wrong with just guiding us into how we do that? What are the best ways to have conversations, things like that?
Just for the audience, would you tell us and break down what the six building blocks are?
Yes, they're protection. So you want to be safe and protected. That's mental protection. So you want to, be able to protect yourself from negative people, people come around talking negatively to you. That's emotional protection. You should have a space that you can process your feelings. And then physical safety. If somebody's hurting you, if you're being abused and harmed, you should not have that in your life, and you should be safe from that. And a lot of people don't recognize that, and they stay in relationships where they're being harmed. But particularly for children, you have a right to that. Number two is everybody needs at least one person in their life who they can talk to, that they can rely upon, that's going to be there to care for them and be responsible for them. So I call that your case of emergency person. That could be like a parent or a sibling or somebody, but just have somebody that if I'm, mentally, emotionally breaking down on the corner, I have someone to call. If my car breaks down on the corner, I have somebody to call. You need that one person. The next thing is coping skills. Everybody needs coping skills. They're different for everybody. They're personal. What may work for me may not work for you. And the only rule about a coping skill is find something or find a bunch of things that make you feel good today and even better tomorrow. Because we pick a lot of coping skills that make us feel good right this second. I'm feeling great. And then tomorrow morning I wake up and I'd say, oh my God, what have I done? I've got the worst headache, or I just slept with somebody I shouldn't have slept with, or whatever. The next one is confidence. We all need help to build our sense of self. That when I do things in the world, I have agency. That if I say I want to be a singer and I go and I try to sing, that I have a process where I understand that I may not be great at it at first, but I'm going to keep building it, and having people around to support that. So confidence building, there's a lot in confidence building that would take a long time to describe, but the next is belonging. Belonging to a group. It could be online. It could be, in your family. It could be at your school, whatever it is. but you need to feel that you're accepted somewhere. And that's a deep biological need, to feel that you belong somewhere. Planet Earth, or I'm a veteran, or a new mother and I belong to the group of in the world that are mothers, or whatever it is. And then finally, storytelling. You have to talk about the things that happen to you when you're ready. But when you do talk about those things, you do two things. One is you organize what happened to you. You create a story, and you have then the power to shape that story into a resilience building story instead of a victim story. That's what like TED Talks do, or the Moth radio hour thing does. But every time we tell our story, whether it's to a therapist or to a friend, you shape what happened, and you realize also your own resilience power. But the other thing about telling the story is that you help other people. You become now a guide for other people. And that's part of also belonging and relationships and all of that. So we have to be able to talk and have space to talk about the things that happen to us. So those are the building blocks.
I find it really interesting how you broke confidence down to a sense of self. I think a lot of people think of confidence as almost like this surface level thing. Or I think for a lot of men, it's almost like a sense of it's like a sense of false masculinity, the whole machismo. But like you said, it's really a sense of self. I don't think I've ever heard it broken down that way.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you have a sense of who you are, a real sense of who you are, it's that Eleanor Roosevelt used to say, nobody can knock you down unless you let them. And the sense of self is what allows you to stand up there and say, yeah, I just did something that everybody is laughing at, or they're like rolling their eyes and I can't do it, but I know myself. And I know that I'm working on something here. There's a Taylor Swift song like that, where it's like, I think she's talking about Kim Kardashian or somebody who talked shit about her while she was trying to, come up in the world. And the lyrics of the song are like, I'm working on something here. And you have to have that sense in yourself that whatever the world is saying, I know I'm doing something that's going to be important eventually. And that's how I felt with Bounce Back Generation for a long time. It's like, I'm working on something here. And whether, funders, or do we have enough followers, or do people understand what I'm doing? It's like, I don't understand what I'm doing quite yet, but I have enough sense of myself that I know that I'm doing something that is right for me. And I believe in it, that it's right for the rest of the world. And I'm just going to keep doing it because I have a sense of self that's like a little person standing up inside me going, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm going to do. And the whole world can tell me I'm wrong, and I'll be okay.
If you could only have, this might be a difficult question, but if you could only have one building block, which one would it be?
Relationship. The most important thing is to have relationships with people. At least one, but as many as possible. But to know that if I were to, fall down and break my leg, I have 5 people who I could call and say, I just fell and broke my leg. And they're like, woo, 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 I'll be there for you. I'll be right there. Or if I, the worst of the worst thing could happen, something happens to my son or something, but I know that there's going to be people there that are going to help me when I fall. But I also have to say, and this may seem out of bounds, but it's important for me, I have relationships that are spiritual. I talk all day long to somebody. I call it God, I call it whatever, and people have different names for it, but I don't even know what it is, but I talk to it all day long. So even if the whole world blew up and I was here on this planet by myself, I would not be alone. I would still be in relationship.
Going back to something we were talking about earlier, I guess how difficult relationships are, and the whole man-woman thing, and AI is going to come, and everything's moving so fast. What kind of struck me, one of the reasons why I think the relationship with my wife and I might be easier for us is because we accept the man woman thing.
Oh, yeah.
We now definitely some nuance. It's not my mom and dad's man and woman thing, but I think at a fundamental level, we've tried different ways. We've experimented ourselves, and it's the easiest.
Mhm.
So, and there's a template there, and it feels natural.
Mhm.
So it's easier. But now where this loops in talking, you saying like you talk to God or you talk to the universe, you talk to whatever it is. I believe in that too. But just as the whole man woman dynamic, I think, is changing in today's day and age, religion is too. And God is too. And I think probably even more so than the whole man woman dynamic, we've lost connection with what well, let me not say everybody, but I think a lot of people have lost connection with that. And I think these two things, like the man woman thing, what you are, who you are, where you are in the universe, your connection with God, I think those two fundamental things not being as stable
Mhm.
puts you in a place where you have to figure it out with no example.
Yeah. 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 But is that a bad thing? I mean, that we have to figure it out with no example. There are examples because you could just, join a religion and follow the rituals and traditions, and there's nothing wrong with that. But is that a bad? So let me tell you, my father was Sikh from India. My mother is from South America, Catholic. They did not teach us religion at all. They said it's up to you, you decide. And neither one of them really practiced. They weren't like doing a lot of stuff and taking us to a Sikh temple or going to church or anything like that. And I think that's a real a great thing to just have it open so I could go and explore. But that's me. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to go do that. I just want to have the template and the traditions all laid out for me. So I think what I hear you saying is that uh, some of these structures are really needed, and a lot of the kind of modern way of living is to mix them all up, and you can worship this god over here or this goddess, or you can join a church and do all that, and same thing with the with gender, that there's a lot of fluidity now with gender and how that's affecting us. And I would say that it puts a lot of onus on an individual to figure that out for themselves and to have that rug pulled out under them of all of the social structures that we've set up. But I would say you can choose to follow those gender roles and those religious roles, or you can choose not to. And my thing is let people have that choice. But I see what you're saying. For a lot of people, they're not going to explore it the way that I did, or they don't have time, or they don't have the resources, or they don't have the inclination to do that. And are we just leaving people with a lot of confusion?
Go. So on the last episode, the last podcast, we were talking about the whole AI thing and how the human species could maybe split into two different species. I think this is that same thing. It's like now it's not just the man woman thing. Now it's not just you pick one religion. Now it's not just your left or your right or whatever it is. It's almost like a create your own path. And you can pick and choose from the buckets you want to pick and choose from. So you can, almost like Legos, I'll take a couple of these and a couple of these and I'll build my own thing. And this is maybe a darker view, and I'm interested in what you think. A portion of people, kind of thinking about how we were talking about evolution, a portion of people won't figure it out
All right.
unless there are people around that help them, and don't try to drag them into, okay, you come on my team, you come on my bucket. I think just being there for someone and saying, here's what you could do, or I'll be here when you try to figure it out. And if you fail, I'm still right here for you.
Mm. Where are we going to get all those people? Except that maybe that's a new career, that AI can't really do, which is to be a responsive guide for people who are searching for all these questions, and really helping them building those questions out so that they can see what they're even dealing with. What gender am I? What sexuality do I choose, or which religion? And those are huge questions for people to have to sort through. And meanwhile, you want to watch your show on Netflix. You want to, you want to go out to dinner, and you want to just do all this other stuff. So I think maybe that's something that we are trying to do here, is to help people to, guide them through some of these questions with some structure to it. And for me, one of the most important things about structure is that we create a structure where it's okay to ask these questions and to be questioning in general, and not to have the choices. I mean, to me, that's the choices thing is more important. We could probably create a more structured, easier world where everybody knows their roles and everything. But I call that authoritarianism.
Tyranny.
Exactly. And I think that's really what we're dealing with right now. We have a group of people that are saying, this is a mess. And if we go back to the traditions and the way things were, and when things were great again, we're all going to be in our boxes and we'll just calm everything down. And then you got all the people on the other side, which I like to be in, which is, it's messy and it's crazy, but it's free. And let's be free to figure these things out for ourselves. And I think that's, for me, that's evolution. Evolution is not going backwards. It is daring to step your foot into the places that we have not gone before, and trusting that as a human species, we'll figure it out. And then we'll have something else that we'll have to deal with, in the year 2400 or whatever. And yeah.
One of the hardest things I would say for myself, but a lot of the people that I work with, is that it's not black and white. It's not like you choose this or you choose this and then you're good to go and everything's great. And I think people want that. And I think that's a large reason why the man-woman thing kind of works for my wife and I. And, we pick and choose some things that work, but there's a set of things that don't. And that's why I believe in God, but don't have a religion. Because there's so much complexity in almost everything you could possibly choose or think about, that if you limit yourself to black and white, you'll miss out on maximizing your best option.
Yeah, I agree. But then it is very complicated. And as like I was saying, a lot of people don't have the time or the resources or the energy, to delve into everything and then say, okay, now I'm going to be this and that. And I guarantee you that whatever you thought of at 18, you're going to be different at 25, and then you're going to be different at 40. I mean, you're constantly doing this stuff, and people need a break. So maybe we don't have to figure everything out. But like, if you're gay, you need to be gay, right? And I think that, or if you're trans, you need to be trans. Or if you're somebody who says, I just want to devote my life to the search for God, you should be able to do that. Things like that. So I think all we need to help people do at some level is to let them feel like it's okay to explore and be the thing that they at least start on that journey to where the person that they want to be, and feel supported in that. And that's what I'm hoping these conversations can help people do, is to see that these are questions that it's not weird to ask. You don't have to be alone in your head asking them, because we're all asking these questions. We're all going through this at some point in, some level or another. We're all trying to figure this out, and it's okay to not have it figured out. I certainly don't. And you will change and grow, but it's okay to ask these questions and not have the answers.
And if you're looking for help or some guidance or some resources or something to spark your curiosity or motivate you as you continue on your journey, please visit bbgtv.org.
bbgtv.org, or go to our YouTube channel if you want to see videos or people who are going through things that you might be going through. Go to our YouTube channel, bbgtv, at bbgtv.org. Yeah, because you're not alone. We're all figuring out our emotions, and we're figuring out how to get stronger, and we're figuring out all these other deep issues, and we're dealing with our fears. And to me, the bottom line is, I want to live life with joy. And everything that we do should be pointing us in the direction of joy. And that's all I got to say.
Okay, well, I don't think I have anything else to add to that.
All right. Well, until next time, then. We'll continue this conversation. Think of something interesting.